So you may be familiar with composition. You've taken another class. Maybe you've studied on your own. I just want to make sure that we sort of have a baseline here and kind of have a common place to work with as we sort of move forward and talk a little bit more in depth about how your composition of your level affects gameplay and the player's perception of the gameplay space. So, what is composition? So composition is a way of communicating information to the player. So essentially, visual information is very complex. And just as if you were to, pick up a book or look at a painting, if you were to pick up a book and all the words were sort of out of order, or if you were to watch a movie and all the scenes were out of order, or the image was jumbled, you wouldn't really be able to glean much information from it. So if you take a look at this image, of course, what you see is static. There's not really any information to sort of gather here, and as you stare at it, your brain tries to start making sense of it, tries to look for patterns. Maybe you see a couple of a spot here, and there. And believe me, that's all unintentional. This is a randomly created image. There is no meaning to find here. And as you stare at this image, eventually you're going to get tired of it and your brain's not going to see anything more to really learn. But if we were to rearrange these pixels, we could possibly arrange them to something like this. Many of you might recognize this image, at least this game. This is Metroid 2: Return of Samus for the Game Boy. And it was a black and white game, or I guess it was green and white, depending on which version of the Game Boy you had. But I guess the point I'm trying to make is that by arranging information in an intelligent way, you can communicate a message, you can communicate an idea. And that's the same with as we sort of think about how to compose our scene out of shapes, we need to sort of think about how those shapes are going to be interpreted by the player and the message that we want to get across to them. So when you have good composition, and we'll get to that exactly what that means, hopefully in a moment, but good composition is something that is visually pleasing to start with. And visually pleasing things encourage the player to investigate them more. They take it in. They spend time on it. They, as a result of that, start to glean meaning from it and start to think about what was the designer's purpose here, or at least they're thinking this, on the subconscious sort of level. When you have bad composition, such as obviously the static that I showed, but we'll see another example of that. Bad composition seems accidental, like this randomly generated image here. So there's nothing to be gained from it. Your brain rejects it. It sees nothing of value here. So I've constructed a small example scene here, as you can see. There we go. And as I look at this pattern, essentially what I'm seeing is much like the static that I showed you a moment ago. There's noise here. There's not a pattern here. I look over here and I'm not seeing anything in particular that's drawing my eye. I start to maybe try to imagine things. Maybe this is sort of drawing me through here. Maybe this, I don't know. Different players that'll play this area right here may respond to it very differently. They're not responding to your intentionality of level placement. They're just trying their best to find a pattern. This is not good composition. Now, I do want to say that, and we'll get to this a little bit more later on, but level designers aren't always going for the best composition, because we are not creating a static image for the player to enjoy, like a painting. Our levels are meant to be enjoyed from all sorts of angles, and basically different compositions over time. So there could be, I said, a situation where a scene like this could actually be very warranted if you were wanting the player to feel confused and lost here, because that's what I'm showing right here. I'm showing something that seems to have no meaning. So maybe if a player was wanting to feel lost, or I was wanting the player to feel lost rather, I could have them sort of go out here and nothing is really sort of drawing them from place to place, and they feel like they don't really have much direction. But in order to get there, we want to first talk about how do we actually create good composition, because once we learn that principle, then we can decide when and where to ignore that principle.